All right. It's 8:30. We're gonna get started. If y'all have a seat. What did I just say? Huh? You say prayer. Bruce, will you open us in prayer? We're going to get started here in 24, 25, 26. Chairman Williams, will you open us in prayer, please?
Be happy to, Mr. Chairman. If y'all bow with me, we'll open in prayer. Father God, thank you for the gift of this day, Lord. Just as this week's before us, Father, we pray that your hand will be ever present in every decision we make. Father, please bless our families at home, bless the travels of those coming and going, bless the people that work here, and may everything we do be good and pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, we're here today to hear House Bill 994. This is a hearing only. There are sign-up sheets out there to speak in support or opposition to the bill. I believe, are they out in the audience? Okay, in the back back there, if you wish to speak to the bill. And Chairman Powell, make sure we're on the right page here. We're working off of LC 520413S. Okay, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Good to be with y'all on a Monday morning at 8:30. We're starting this off early this year. I bring to you this bill today to help some of our boat rental industry in the state of Georgia. Georgia is one of 3 states, as I understand, that does not, that puts the burden of liability on the livery or the marine dealer or whoever is leasing a boat. And what this basically does, it kind of puts it in line. When I first learned about this, we're trying to put it in line just like people who rent cars. Georgia, you've got probably several 100,000 boat rentals a year. As y'all know, that Georgia is a very recreationally oriented state with a lot of marinas and a lot of lakes around the state of Georgia. And a lot of people don't want to own a boat. They want to rent one. I see them cruising around Lake Hartwell all the time. I can spit across the lake in South Carolina, and a lot of those boat rentals are coming out of Carolina today instead of on the Georgia side. Lake Lanier, I'm told, and it wouldn't surprise me if these figures aren't right, that they have in excess of 10,000 boat rentals a year up on Lake Lanier. Not that I want to use Lake Lanier as an excuse for anything, since it's a second-class lake compared to Lake Hartwell. But what this bill does, ladies and gentlemen, that the owner of the boat, the livery of the boat, they would continue to be liable for any issues that they have with the boat. But if someone wants to lease a boat, then they'll take out a private insurance policy that'll be offered for liability. It's I believe it's $200,000 for any injured individual and up to $500,000 per incident. Quite frankly, that's the abbreviated version of this bill. It's a pretty well straight up and down bill that you see here, and hopefully this will put the burden of liability where it goes. I will say that the livery system, they do have certain obligations. One, and it's in here, that they ought to know who they're renting to. They got to put copies of rules and contracts and all of that on the boat. If a boat livery system rents to someone that is obviously, or someone they should have known was not capable, then they would hold a certain level of liability to that. And that, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, be glad to stand for any questions, because I understand there's some folks that want to testify to this.
We're going to see if anybody on the committee has any questions. But first, you're saying that we're only one of 3 states that puts the burden upon the renter?
What I am told is
the person renting the boat.
Georgia's one of 3 states. Georgia law was written in '68. I'm surprised that we have left any stone unturned, that this is just now appearing in 2024. But because of the liability issues to the marinas and all, a lot of them have gotten out of the business. They're not leasing boats anymore. So 3 states, it's Georgia, New York, and I believe it's Utah. I didn't even know they had a lake in Utah except for the Salt Lake, but
Salt water, Salt Lake.
but that's my understanding. I know that the surrounding states around Georgia,
Yes,
that this is the law in those states. So it sort of puts our marine industry at unfair competition.
we've got a couple of questions, and before we start, the group of my friends up that used to be known as Keep It and Haul, they say Hartwell is really run by South Carolina, and got 2 states running that lake up there. They think maybe probably Lanier's the best lake in the state of Georgia, but
Well, that may be partially correct since Georgia sits on the state line.
yes.
But to the truth of the matter is, since Clemson sits right on Lake Hartwell up there, then they've lost any title they have to managing our lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I assume neither one of y'all would make a claim that these muddy little ponds competed with the Atlantic Ocean.
We have a couple of questions. We have a couple of questions. Number 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Chairman Powell, in Columbus, we have whitewater rafting. We're not included in what you're doing here, right? The rafts.
I've never heard of a raft over 16 foot.
Well, that is not in
Has-
what
No,
we see before us. That's why I'm asking you
No, ma'am.
for clarification.
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Number 5. Who's number 5?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have an idea what the cost is for getting insurance? I mean, I picture this kind of like renting a car, right? You have to you either have insurance. Your insurance covers your car that you rent, or you buy the supplemental insurance for the car that you rent. Do you have an idea what the cost is for the insurance for the boat?
As somebody that has the pleasure that I own way too many boats, no, I wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, just trying to understand it a little bit better, these people that rent boats, these boat renting out agencies, they own their boats. They're not leasing them from other people like other boat owners and turning around and acting like some kind of
A broker?
yes, or broker or like, what's the word? Almost like a Airbnb, that they're the boat's being provided by one person. This person's acting as a middleman to put a renter in the boat.
I can't address that.
I was just curious.
I can't imagine that they would. It's sort of like I learned earlier in my life about borrowing a tractor from somebody. Normally, I wound up having to fix their darn tractor because something was wrong with it to start with. But it is my belief that these marine dealers, and those are the ones that are in that business, that they own those boats. Now, they may lease it from a factory. I couldn't tell
Right,
you.
that's different though. I'm just
but
curious from
as
another.
far as being a broker from somebody else's boat, I can't imagine that would be a good business model.
And just follow-up question, if I may, just in a similar vein, I know that there's car sharing platforms out there, I forget the name of them, where you might have a pickup truck that you only drive a day or so a week, but you can put your pickup truck on that platform, and somebody that needs to pick up something at Home Depot can rent your vehicle, come to your driveway, get in it, go to Home Depot, pick up their refrigerator and take it to their house, and then return it, your truck, back to your house. Is there, and this is a offline question, somebody can help me get my mind around. I'm just wondering, does any of that type of platform exist in the pleasure boat craft industry? And if so, the follow-up question would be, how does this legislation help or hurt that ability for people to do that? Just
I cannot answer that question.
well, that's why I
This
say I'm
is
happy to
about-
find out offline.
most of these boats that are rented are for recreational purpose.
Yes, sir.
And it would not be very good business for a marina to rent a boat to a bunch of teenagers or college students to come up. Generally, if you see somebody put 5 cases of beer or an X number of distilled spirits on a boat, that doesn't bode well, because alcohol and water, from my experience, they don't blend very well together.
I understand. I appreciate I like the merits of the bill. I'm just trying to understand what else it might be touching. But thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Appears we have no other questions. We got a couple of people want to speak to the bill. Will Archer.
Good morning, this is Will. My name's Dan.
Again, tell me who you are, who you with, and tell us who he is again.
I'm William Archer with Best in Boating.
I'm Dan Groom Trainer with Best in Boating. We've got a little PowerPoint here to accompany our testimony. Chairman Tarvin, Chairman Lumsden, and committee members, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come speak to you today, and we want to thank you for your service and commitment to our great state. We'd also like to thank Chairman Powell for championing this issue for our industry. My name is Dan Groom Traina. I am the managing partner at TEI Industries, more commonly known as Best in Boating. With me is Will, who leads our boat rental operations, as well as Brent Pearson, our chief operating officer. Our company was founded by my dad, Doug Traina, in 1981 with the purchase of Park Marina and Red Top State Park on Lake Allatoona. At that time, it was just him and one employee. Over the next 42 years, he steadily grew our business into what it is today, a 100% family-owned company with 4 marinas across Lake Allatoona and the largest marina on Lake Lanier. We employ over 500 people here in Georgia across slip leasing, boat sales, boat service, food and beverage, and what we are here to talk to you about today, boat rentals. The boat rental industry in the state of Georgia faces an existential crisis, not just for us, but for all marinas in our state. The way the law is currently written, as the owner of the boat, we are vicariously liable for anything and everything that occurs out on the water, even in instances where the renter is grossly negligent. To parallel this to the car rental industry, if you rent a car, drive to a bar, become intoxicated, or perhaps let your 12-year-old son or daughter drive the boat and or drive a car and an accident occurs, Hertz or Avis or another car rental company would not be liable. By comparison, if this same series of events happened with boat rentals here in Georgia, we would be liable just because we own the boat. I'd like to share one real-world example of how this has directly impacted us. In 2019, we rented a boat to a gentleman who went through our training procedures, which William will touch on here in a second. When he left our facility, he was trained and was made fully aware that he did not have consent at any time as the captain of the vessel to consume alcohol or be under the influence in any way. Out on the water, he subsequently, willfully, and intentionally and negligently broke not only our rules, but also the law, and got both drunk and high on drugs. He started the motor and put the boat in reverse while a swimmer was in the water. A young woman's leg was mangled, resulting in amputation. The renter went to jail and was charged with BUI and possession of drugs. Our insurance company, despite our pleadings to fight, settled out of court for $4.2 million, all because our training and education, consent policies, both verbal and in writing, and all other reasonable procedures do not stand a chance against vicarious liability, a Georgia code that was written in 1968. 47 other states, including our bordering neighbor states, have adopted language that provides protections for boat rental liveries and in these instances, and unfortunately, we are one of the 3 states that have not. The existential threat that we face is that we are on a razor-thin margin to being uninsurable, which will cause our entire industry to cease to exist. 10 years ago, we had 7 or more insurance companies to choose from. Slowly, all of these insurance companies have left the state, and this past year, we had one choice. We are one major claim away from having no options, and we, alongside other boat rental operators, will be forced to stop all operations. We are asking for your help and consideration to help our industry survive. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Will.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, Chairman Tarvin, Chairman Lumsden, and committee members. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak to you and thank you for your dedication and your service in our state. My name is William Archer. I've been in boat rentals for Best in Boating for 34 years now. And to start, we want to share a few numbers and facts about our boat rental business in the state of Georgia. We have 130 rental boats in our fleet, employ over 100 people, and are grateful to complete over 10,000 rentals annually. With an average of 6 people per boat, we provide affordable lake access to over 60,000 people each year. We believe boat rentals provide key access to our state's natural resources and are a huge component of tourism and recreation within our local communities. Not everyone can afford a lake house or a boat, and renting a boat provides a low-cost opportunity to get outdoors and enjoy or visit the many lakes and waterways Georgia has to offer. Now, we've been renting boats for a long time, and we realized along the way that the best way to avoid liability is to prevent accidents from happening at all. We have worked tirelessly on our safety protocols and believe that we have set the standard not only in Georgia, but nationwide. In fact, in 2014, the state approached us about our procedures and shortly thereafter modeled the state-required boat rental education law after our rental safety and training program. This is code section 52-7-8.3. The recently promoted Colonel Mike England with DNR Law Enforcement Division can attest to that. We require our captains to go through a 5-step training program starting with a pre-qualifier, which is watching the DNR-approved boater education video and passing a test with an 80% score or higher. Sign a digital contract, go through a full live safety orientation program, and take the captain's pledge. In addition, we have custom-made safety decals plastered all over our rental boats at every location. Now we'd like to show you a brief clip of one of our renters taking that captain's pledge now.
Okay, why don't you just read it, Will?
Okay. Well, there's the script that we have every single one of our rental customers and captains read while we video
I'm
them.
happy to read it. I can just read the pledge. My name is, and I have completed the boater safety course and captain's pledge required by state law to operate the vessel. I will not allow anyone without proper certification and boater's license to operate this vessel at any time. I understand that I do not have consent to operate this vessel under the influence of drugs or alcohol. If I am impaired, I will park or anchor the vessel and contact Paradise Rental Boats to have it transported back. I will make sure no one enters the water without a life vest, and I will not allow anyone in the water within the 30 feet awareness zone while the engine is running. I will keep my head on a swivel and constantly scan my surroundings for boats or other hazards. I accept the responsibility for the safe operation of this vessel and the safety of everybody on board.
You know, after we finish our safety presentation, we do that with an iPad with checklists, and this is what each customer recites as we video them. It's a pretty impactful statement, right? And it may seem a little extreme to some, and it may be a little uncomfortable for some, but this sometimes this is what it takes to make it sink in, to drive that message home. We take training and safety of our renters and customers very seriously. But no matter what we do, our procedures won't hold water against the vicarious liability language in this current Georgia code. In closing, we're not asking to be absolved of all liability. If we're negligent, we should be liable. And you'll see this bill mandates insurance for boat rental liveries. We are just asking not to be liable for anything and everything just because we own the boat, especially if gross negligence by the renter is at play. We are counting on your help and support to modify this antiquated law, bring Georgia up to parity alongside the other 47 states, including our neighbors, and allow the boat rental industry to thrive and survive. Thank you again for your time and we are happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, sir. Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. In the other states that have corrected this issue, where do the person who rent the boat get the insurance? Is it there from the company, or do they have to find it elsewhere? How does it work?
The answer is that it's somewhat of a mixed bag. There are examples of states. So 47 other states have amended their language to update for vicarious liability. Not every one of those 47 states mandates or requires insurance for the renter. There are examples of our neighbor to the south, Florida, actually did add this language, and unfortunately it's had mandating insurance for the renter, and it's created some catastrophic results for their boat rental industry. The spot insurance market for renters itself is not a large market. There's only 3 companies out there that are doing it. It's very new. To answer somebody's question before, the cost of spot insurance can be up to 50% of the cost of our whole rental. The process can take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, and some of the spot insurance companies require that in order to get insurance, you have to tie it to a specific vessel. We've all been to Hertz or Avis or a car rental company, and you think you're getting a Toyota Corolla and you end up getting a Honda Civic. It's very difficult logistically to go through that procedure in a time that's quick, without having a practical or business ramification. And so as a result, in the state of Florida, a lot of operators are actually having to operate outside of the law right now, and there's a coalition that's been formed to stay that law while they try and figure out an appropriate way to move forward.
Chairman Deloach.
One very quick question, please. Obviously, in the state of Georgia, if you operate a motor vehicle, you're required to have insurance on it. Is the owner of a boat required to have liability insurance on that boat in order to operate it, to register it and operate it?
No boater in the state of Georgia is currently mandated to carry liability insurance. Anyone, you could go buy a boat today, 20 minutes later, trailer it out to the lake as a boat owner and go out on the water self-insured. We believe that through our safety presentation, live orientation, and all training, as a boat rental industry, we are at the same standard or higher for safety for people out there operating on the water. The vast, vast, vast majority of people who own a boat out on the water today are not part of the boat rental industry, and they are not mandated to have any sort of liability insurance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Pearson, are you going to speak other than, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Dan Snipes.
Thank you, Chairman Tarvin, Chairman Luntz. I'm Dan Snipes. I'm an attorney in Statesboro. I'm with the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. In looking at this bill and trying to compare it to the car rental industry, it's just not a fair comparison, because as Chairman Deloach pointed out, if you own an automobile in Georgia, you're required to have insurance on it, and you're not required to have insurance on a boat. When you rent a vehicle, you're required to either buy insurance at the time of the rental or show proof of your own insurance in order to take the vehicle off the lot. It's just not a fair comparison with automobiles and any type of water vessel. That's the reason why liability for use of a boat flows through the ownership of the boat. So if you're the owner of the boat, you're responsible for what happens with the boat. It's not that there's just vicarious liability that just attaches to people who rent boats. It flows through the ownership of the boat. So whether or not you rent the boat or you allow someone to use it with permission or you're using it yourself, if you own the boat, you're responsible for what happens with the boat. And that's what Georgia's law is currently, and it's really just about responsibility. Because if someone is irresponsible in the use of that boat, there's no guarantee of insurance in place at all right now, and the only responsibility flows through the ownership. GTLA is committed to try to continue to work on this bill, but right now, in lines 28 through 36, while it uses the phrase negligence entrustment, it bases that standard on a new or should have known and includes the language, a known habit of carelessness or recklessness. What it's trying to do is insulate anybody who rents a boat from just negligence. It's trying to take it from a negligence standard and then have a heightened standard that they have to have a known habit of carelessness or recklessness in order to be liable. And then the mandatory insurance provisions on line 58 through 75 only provide insurance when they've already taken away any real responsibility they would have in lines 28 through 36. So while we understand the idea and we want to try to help work with the renters of boats to make sure this industry does well, and I think as the best in boating people have shown, when done responsibly, it's a business that can thrive. We want to make sure there's still guardrails in place so when people rent boats irresponsibly, that there is a mechanism in place to hold people responsible, and we're committed to continue to work on it. But the current draft of the bill provides, it takes away responsibility from the owner of a boat and leaves somebody who's injured by the negligence of another quite most likely with nowhere to turn to be compensated. So right now, in its current form, it needs to be reworked some more. So thank you.
Chairman Deloach.
I just want to point out that this bill is incredibly important, I believe, because one of the things that has been happening on the coast for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years is almost everybody down there owns at least one boat, and a lot of people own two, and they wind up putting them in the water twice a year. So they're putting them in a pool with some, whatever you call it, broker or whoever, and you sit your boat on the lot, and it's available for rental, so you get some income from the boat. So something needs to be done, and I don't know if this bill is the perfect way to do it, but you said y'all gonna work on it. I hope y'all will work something out because it is important.
Thanks, sir. Let me ask you this again, from your point of view. If I own a boat and I go get on Lake Lanier or Lake Hartwell or any other lake in Georgia, I don't have to have liability insurance?
No, sir. In fact, ownership of an automobile is one of the few places in Georgia where someone's required to have insurance. You're not required to have insurance to practice law. You're not required to have insurance to practice medicine. You're not required to have insurance to do almost anything besides operate a motor vehicle.
Okay, well, and just from a business owner standpoint, it hasn't got anything to do with boats. Boat owner's renting this boat and he's got insurance. Every time there's an accident, they're gonna pretty much end up with a bill on this. And 9 out of 10 times, if nobody else got insurance, if it's that kind of accident, would that be maybe fair to say?
Well, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Currently, that's the law in Georgia, is that the liability for the negligent operation of a boat goes to the owner. The owner.
I'm not so much the owner as the one that's got the insurance is the one that's probably going to get the fault in the end. Well,
but there's no requirement anybody has insurance. So, I mean, I'm trying to understand your question.
Well, my question is, these people are renting boats as a business. They're trying to do what's right, and I'm not taking up for them I don't really know how I feel about this bill. And maybe I'm mixed up, because I get that way every now and then. they're trying to do what's right and they're protecting themselves with insurance, but then they can't be responsible for someone who does something on their own that's willfully neglecting the contract that they're going to have with them. So, I guess my question is, it looks like the whole thing needs to start over. I'm not talking about this bill. I'm talking about the whole boating industry somehow.
Well, I mean, I certainly think that's a valid point that you're making. I think everybody that's in the boat rental business in Georgia started that business with the understanding of this is the current law in Georgia, and now they're coming in trying to fundamentally change what the law has been in Georgia for roughly 60 years.
All right, thanks, sir. Mr. Ashley?
I'll keep it standard, thank you. My name is Drew Ashby. I'm an attorney in the state of Georgia. I've been involved in 3 cases involving marinas, 2 of which I defended successfully. And the things that I wanted to point out, I'll try to piggyback off of Mr. Snipes. The way that the industry was set up in Georgia back in the 60s was, albeit it was admittedly unique, but the way that the industry is set up now, based on that, is that you essentially have a stool. It's either a 2 or a 3-legged stool, depending on how you look at it, and taking away the requirement of insurance following the boat, which is what we have now, would be like kicking a leg out from underneath that stool. And from a policy perspective, that's a problem. It's a huge problem, because what you end up with is boat renters are the people who are statistically most likely to need insurance, because they are the people who almost by definition don't own a boat and have the least amount of experience on a boat. And it's not just the people on the boat that they're renting that are in danger. It's the boating public in general, the people engaging in water sports generally. And so the thorny issue that I think this subcommittee is picking up on is that if we get rid of the requirement that insurance follow the boat, then we are going to end up with a situation where there is no insurance at all. And that is a problem, because that will shift the burden onto society, either through Medicare or through Medicaid, or just unpaid hospital bills that force people into bankruptcy. And it will provide disincentives for the various kinds of safety programs that we see right now. So as a policy measure, this is going to, if passed in its current form, end up in a situation where the vast majority of people on lakes do not have insurance. And that, because when something goes wrong on a 16-foot vessel or larger, something goes, as they say in South Georgia, bad wrong. And that is the exact kind of situation that needs insurance. So we're either going to have that with the owner of the boat, or we're going to shift it to the renter, whose engagement in a boat in a span of a year can be measured by hours, and who almost certainly won't be getting insurance unless required to do so. Which is why if that position is added in here, in other words, if that provision is said, we are going to shift the responsibility of owning insurance to the renter, that is a situation that could alleviate the concern. The issue is that a possibility? I think it's absolutely a possibility. There is the availability of spot insurance. It has been built up in the car market like crazy, and it could certainly be built up in this industry a lot better. With that, I'd like to point out another problem with the bill in its current form. Under subsection C, under subsection C, we see the liability of a marina is explained. And it essentially says that the owner of a boat livery, that is a marina or any other rental service, shall not be liable as an owner of a vessel as provided in subsection B, and then it goes on to explain the liability. At the end of the paragraph where it says, the owner of a boat livery shall be liable for the negligent entrustment of a vessel, what it does in the language after that is it changes Georgia law for the standard on negligent entrustment. Negligent entrustment, as a general rule, is a negligence standard, and the negligence standard is measured by reasonableness. So what should the owner or the livery here knew or reasonably should have known under the circumstances of a particular fact pattern, but it changes it at the end because in the last provision of the last sentence it says, or should have known the operator of a boat livery vessel was incompetent based upon age, experience, or a known habit of carelessness or recklessness. And I'd submit to you the issue with that is that almost certainly by definition, if you are a business in the business of renting vessels, you're not going to know the people you rent to. There might be small exceptions here and there. And so that should be changed to a reasonableness standard. The other thing I would point out about that is that if you provide a boat to the boating public for rent, it should be reasonably safe for its intended use, which is, of course, boating or water sports. A lot of marinas either have in-house maintenance operations or they contract with maintenance operations that are close by or, frankly, at the marina. What we would need to add to this bill in order for this negligence standard to be normal and to incentivize good behavior on both sides of the issue is to say they should be liable for their actions, inactions, or negligence for anything that a reasonable inspection would have revealed. So, for example, if they, we'll make up an example, they put the propeller on backwards or something like that, and that causes an issue and that it results in harm. Under the current bill, there would be no responsibility for that whatsoever, essentially complete immunity. But you would need something for the inspection, the reasonable inspection of a boat to be safe, and that should apply also to the folks that you rent to. And I said, like I said, the other part I wanted to point out about this is the insurance requirement. There's either going to be an insurance requirement or there isn't. We're either going to have the owners of the boat, whether it be just a few boats or a large marina, because folks, there are boat rental companies that are not marinas, right? There are third-party boating companies that will bring the boat to the lake for you. We're either going to have them purchase one policy and spread that cost out over all the rentals, which they have the ability to do through the rental price, or we're going to shift that burden to the consumer. Either is an acceptable way to do it. We just have to figure out the best way to do that so that we guarantee that people who share the beautiful resources that we heard about earlier through our Georgia lakes aren't subjected to catastrophic issues where there's no coverage. Thank you.
Chairman Loach.
One real quick question. This should be real easy for a trial lawyer. Do you believe that the state of Georgia should enact legislation that required any operator of a boat to carry liability insurance?
I think it's an option to do that for renters who are the people who need liability insurance most.
But what about the boat owners?
The boat owners can make the decision as to whether they want to bear that liability risk on themselves, because under the current bill, a boat owner, for example, a hypothetical boat owner here who doesn't necessarily rent it, would still be liable as the liability follows the boat, not the person. So they could make that decision whether they want to do that. But renters are a situation where I think we know statistically they're the least likely to purchase insurance, and so if we required that, that would be an acceptable substitute. You
don't really believe that the owner of an automobile ought to make that individual decision, do you?
Well, they can't under the current laws.
That's why I'm asking, do you think we should enact laws in Georgia that required anybody operating a vessel on Georgia waters to carry liability insurance?
None other than renters. I don't think someone with a 10-foot John boat needs insurance. If they decide they want to bear that liability themselves, I think that's perfectly reasonable. What could be unreasonable is creating a system where the vast majority of problems on a lake, because a lot of times the incidents, and it will be no surprise to the committee, are through boat renters, right? So the vast majority of the instances of horrible things that happen on lake come through renters. So if they're going to not purchase boats but enjoy them for hours in a year, it's a wonderful thing, and it's a great business. I've rented boats in the state of Georgia, and I intend to do so in the future, but it's also a situation where we shouldn't leave them without any coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Powell, do you have anything to add on closing? And
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I listened to the last gentleman's testimony, and I'm not sure which side of this he's on, but I feel certain that he's on probably a good solid footing to try to move forward. The general idea of this is because we have the rental car rental business in this state, and it works quite well. And I thought there was ample language, but I'm not an attorney. I thought there was ample language that if you're the owner in the marina that's renting a boat, that you'd be responsible if you had not maintained the boat or if there was an issue with the boat. And that's to put the onus on the renter of that boat. Now, somebody goes out and they get stewed while they're out there, which is not uncommon. Yeah, they ought to be held responsible if they create an accident or for whatever that purpose is. So that being said, it appears that GTLA has got some ideas. We're going to probably have to work with these ideas, and I understand that. And we'll probably be working with them starting today sometime. And but I think this committee gets the general idea. To my good friend on the coast, you know, he has a different set of circumstances, but they're all have a commonality. They have different boats down there on the ocean. But this idea of going to the point of start saying it's required to have insurance, you know, that'd be a policy decision based on the legislature. And I'm certainly not going to be the one that's going to tout that idea. So I would appreciate any of y'all's ideas to make this a better bill where we can move it on forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you bringing this bill. And of course, I will tell you this, in my 10 years being down here, I've seen a lot of things that I thought was important that I didn't know about. I think this is one of them. I see a viable business for this state out there that almost in a position where they're going to be in a point where they can't operate. If this is important to us as a state and important to these people, we need to come to a conclusion on this. And I appreciate you bringing the bill, and it's something I'd never thought about. And this will conclude the meeting. You'll be hearing from Chairman Lumsden, and maybe we get this worked out. It's very important. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.